early 20th century, the world had just fallen in love with the first purely American art form, a syncopated and intoxicating music called ragtime. Ragtime originated in the saloons and brothels of Missouri, where itinerant musicians blended African rhythms and folk songs with military marches to create an entirely new sound.
What the guys did, they took the beat of the left foot, 1, 2, 3, 4, put it in the left hand like this. Taking a tuba. And he had a trombone, which is the passing bass. Sliding into the next key. They weren't satisfied with that, so in 1896 they added the banjo, 5-string banjo in the right hand. And it sounded like this in 1860. 1996. 1997. That's ragtime music.
Once the basic elements of ragtime were established, a composer named Scott Joplin took the music to a new level of complexity and popularity. In 1899, Joplin was searching for a publisher for his compositions when he met John Stark.
When Stark heard Joplin played a Maple Leaf, he realized that was a great tune, it was classic. So he published that, and it sold about 50,000 copies.
After the publication of the Maple Leaf Ragtime became an international success. For nearly 20 years, ragtime was the world's most popular music. But after World War I, Americans were ready for a new music, jazz. Born on March 31st, 1920, Bob Darch barely missed the ragtime era. But from the moment he was introduced to the energetic music, Bob Darch devoted his life to the study and promotion of ragtime.
Well, I was an only child, and when I was about 6, we lived in Center Line, Michigan, which was about just a suburb of Detroit. My dad, I don't know, he bought a piano, and I was fiddling around on it, so he got me music lessons with Mrs. Corchon in 1929. And she taught me the basics, but I wasn't getting anywhere. So a black man, who preferred to be called a Negro, like you all did at that time, he had 7 children. My father had a grocery store, and he run up a bill of about $300, and with no way to pay it off. He's a music teacher, he said. So my dad said, well, to amortize out the cost, if you teach my son to play the piano, why, then we can amortize out what you owe me. So that's how I started taking it. And it was only 20, 30 years later that I found out that Gene Turpin was Tom Turpin's nephew. And that was quite a wonderment to me. So I learned to play ragtime music. My mother thought I was taking classics. And my mother opened the door and we'd be playing Russian rag, Rachmaninoff's Prelude and C-sharp minor in ragtime. And swing right into the real stuff. So she never caught on. When I was 15 years old, unbeknown to my father, I got a job playing piano at the Gaiety Burlesque in Detroit, Michigan. So, and the girls used to, in those days it was still more discreet, they didn't take all their clothes off. But when they got finished and doing their dance and one thing or another, there'd be 4 of them, as they exited, each one they had silver shoes on, and they would kick a leg up like this and squeal, and then they'd throw a bra off, but they never took it off, but they had a bra hanging up on the backstage, and they'd fire that up, just the guys that just go bananas. This is what they always did. Oh yeah, I stayed on the piano. Then the war came along and I was a private, got drafted in 40. And I knew after I got in there for about 6 months that I wanted to be something besides just a private, so I went to OCS school, became an officer. For 13 years I did that, and I got out of the Army and started up at the Red Dog Saloon in Juneau, Alaska. I've been going ever since. This little tune's entitled I Used to Call Her Baby, But Now, considered very risque in 1909, written by Clarence Cole. I used to call her baby, 'cause she was just a baby to me. When she said we should wed, I really felt glad. Took her home and introduced her to my dad. That's when I lost my baby. That is all that cash you see. She never even stopped to say ta-ta. Next thing I knew, she'd gone and married my pa. To think I used to call her baby, and now I have to call her mom.
As Bob Darch toured the country, playing in saloons and giving concerts in ragtime, he amassed a large following. After hearing Bob play, Helen and Smiley Wallace became obsessed with the jaunty rhythms of ragtime.
We were living in Joplin, Missouri, and Joplin was having a telethon for cerebral palsy or something like that. And we were watching it on TV because they had different entertainers. And our youngest daughter said, "I'll give everything in my piggy bank." And our older daughter, being a chip off the old block, said, "I'll give everything in my piggy bank, but I want to go in there to see what they do with my money." So Smiley took them to the telethon, and just as they entered the building, the electricity went off and it was just plunged into darkness. They pushed this white upright grand piano on stage, and Bob Darch came out and sat down and played, and the audience all went back and sat down. He held the crowd there until the electricity came on. And Smiley, I hadn't gone with him, and Smiley came home and he said, "Helen, I think I just witnessed something that is going to change our lives." And he was correct, because we went in then to the Glass Hat to hear Bob, and we were just mesmerized like everyone else.
In the Glass Hat, the last few nights there, they would run out of ice and stuff like that, and all the other saloons had nobody in them up and down Main Street. They just close up, and Dick Mills is going up and down. Dick Mills, the manager, is going up and down the alley with a bucket, getting all of their ice cubes because nobody else, you don't need them, you don't have any customers.
Well, Bob would play and play and play. Finally, somebody would come up on the stand and say, "Bob, you're taking a break now, come on," and just drag him off the stand because he loved it so.
When Ragtime Bob Darch was not performing, he was researching ragtime. He located and interviewed many of the original ragtime composers, and in 1962, he brought 3 of the greatest ragtime composers out of retirement to record an album together.
Hi, folks. I'm Ragtime Bob Darch. I'm proud and thrilled to be able to present for this golden reunion in ragtime 3 of the greatest living pianists and composers of that era.
I'm U.B. Blake from Baltimore, Maryland.
Now, does that sound like a man of 79 years? And here we have another young fellow of only 80.
I'm Joe Jordan from Tacoma, Washington.
And last but not least,
I'm Charlie Thompson from St. Louis, Missouri.
Charlie's only 71. Today I'm realizing a dream come true. For after 50 years, these great composers and pianists are playing together again. And how? Show 'em, boys.
Bob Darch's major accomplishment in life was creating an entirely new generation of ragtime performers, Wherever he went, he would play concerts in schools to educate the children about ragtime, and he would always encourage and support aspiring young pianists.
I used to get letters from guys in Sweden and Denmark. In fact, there's two of them. It's Peter Lundberg and Kjell Waltman. They wrote me. The first one was Peter Lundberg. He was 18 years old. He said there was no ragtime music in Sweden. Would I send him some? I had a ton of music. I remember it was a big 1.5-ton truck I had full of boxes. Well, I had a lot of that music with me, so I made a roll this big. I rolled it all up, never forget, and I put lots of brown paper around it. And I took it down to the post office, and I told the guy, this was on a Saturday morning, about 9 o'clock, I said, I want a 1-cent stamp, a 2-cent stamp, 3 cents. How much is this going to cost me? He says, $26. And so he got his music. When I went to visit him a few years later, he had all those stamps and everything else cut out like this with his address, and I had it framed. I knew it would be something you want to keep.
I'd like to play a tune that I wrote many years ago for a very dear friend of mine named, whom you all know, Ragtime Bob Darch. It's called the Jack Daniels Old No. 7, Lament. And it's dedicated to my dear friend Bob Darch.
This performance was recorded at the 2001 Scott Joplin International Ragtime Festival in Sedalia, Missouri, the world's largest ragtime festival, and one that Ragtime Bob Darch helped to create. Bob Darch continued to perform until his death in 2002. His influence on ragtime will continue to be felt as long as the music is played.
Bob was the P.T. Barnum of ragtime. He was a wonderful, wonderful showman, and he was a wealth of information. The circus was nothing when Bob came to town.